Hello and welcome to the shed. In today's video we're going to be talking about pine, stains and sanding sealers. Hope you enjoy. So in this video I'm going to be showing you the results of a series of tests that I've done with stain on pine, with 1 pound, 2 pound sanding sealers, and then exactly how many coats are required of a tinted shellac and just my straight stain that I'll use, which I'll show you in a minute, to block out the grain, because I keep getting questions about applying stains to pine and also how to block the grain out, particularly on pine. So I've done these tests. I wanted to share the results with you today. So just one caveat I wanted to put in here is that I don't have a lot of experience using stains. I only really use the spirit stain, which I'll show you in a minute. I also don't have a lot of experience using sanding sealers and various other film finishes and stuff. Shellac is my main film finish that I use. So any of you with more experience, please sound off in the comments below if you think any of this is not right or 100% accurate, or if you've come up with some other different findings. Please let me know. This is the stain I've been using. It's a Feast Watson. This is in walnut, and it is a spirit stain, so it's clean up and methylated spirits. So I like this particular stain because it dries really quick. You can recoat over the top of it after 30 minutes, so it's very, very quick to dry. Only thing is, it does have quite a smell to it, so when you're using anything like this, make sure you use the correct type of respirator with your correct filters, because you don't want to be breathing this stuff in. It's not good for you. Now that's out of the way, let's jump in here and I'll show you the results. So what you can see here is a couple of sample pieces of this piece of pine here, which happens to be the same sort of pine we used for that box a few videos back. So what I've got here is I've got a control, so this has no sanding sealer on it. I've got this one here which has a 1 pound shellac, 1 coat sanding sealer, and a 2 pound. So as we can see, when you stain on pine, we get a lot of blotchiness and unevenness with the staining. You can see that this has even picked up ridges that you can't necessarily see on the main board from whatever planer this went through when it was face planed. So the thing with stain is that it highlights a lot of imperfections in your timbers, just like a lot of finishes. So we can see that this looks quite splotchy. And we move on to the sanding sealer, which for those of you who are not familiar with sanding sealer, it's primarily shellac. And I just mixed my own shellac, so I used a 1 and a 2 pound shellac here, as you can see. I'll leave the video down below for you to mix your own sanding sealer, and also the video I did deep diving into shellac, so you can mix your own. So then we move on to the 1 pound shellac here, and we can see that it is actually a little bit smoother through here, and those ridge lines are less prominent, which means that sealing the grain definitely has an effect on improving staining pine. Now I came here, this was a 2 pound shellac, and interestingly, this has highlighted the grain just like the control did. But we can see that this is soaked in more and it's a little bit darker, whereas this one is quite a bit lighter and it's still splotchy. From what you can see just here, it would appear that the 1 pound shellac actually does a better job at sealing the grain, maybe because it soaks in better and just still allows the stain to stain the timber properly. I'm not sure. Let me know in the comments down below if you've experienced this. After I did that, I thought, well, what happens if I use a tinted shellac? So I went ahead and did a tinted shellac, which I've used on my plane handles up here, which you've seen me use in the past. And we can see that that's come up very light because it's soaked right in. Now, the tinted shellac I used here was not using this stain. It was using a brown aniline dye because that's what I already had mixed up. I could have easily mixed this, but as you'll see later on, the colours are not too different, and it's not really the colours of the stain we're looking at here, it's how the grain shows through and how even the application is. So we can see this tinted shellac was made up with a 1 pound shellac, and you can see just how much that soaks in and how fine a colour it leaves. So then I decided, let's do some more coats to see how even we can get. So I've gone ahead and I applied 4 coats to all of these, just so you can see what happens when you start building the layers. On our control, we can see that it's come up much darker. You can still see those ridge lines in here. You can still really see the prominent lines from the pine here, but we do have a more even coverage because we've got more finish applied. So then we move on to the 1 pound, and we can see with 4 coats it's a more even color right through, and it's not as splotchy. Like some areas are darker here, it's more of an even color right through, and those grain lines are less prominent. Now obviously those planer marks are still there. That's an easy fix just by sanding them out or hand planing before you do apply the stain. We moved on to the 2 pound, and we can see once again the 2 pound is accentuated these little knots, and the grain seems to, and these grain lines seem to be more accentuated, and it's a little more splotchy, like you can see the controllers here. So once again, from what I've seen here, it would appear that the 1 pound is the best finish if you're trying to apply this and get an even application to something like pine. Then we moved into the tinted shellac, and we can see the tinted shellac, being a film finish, it did accentuate the grain a little bit. It is still accentuating those ridge lines from the planer a little bit, but we do have a much more even application because it is a film finish. And building up the film finish over time is going to get you a darker application and eventually block the grain. So then I thought, well, what if we're not using a light grained timber? So I grabbed some jarrah that I've got here. What I did with this jarrah was apply the same 4 coats as we did to these ones here. And this is the stain on this side just here. And this is our tinted shellac. So you can see straight away that the grain is not accentuated as much here. And we have a nice thick even film with even color right through in our tinted shellac. And we have a pretty good even complete coverage using our stain here as well. So these are much of a muchness. Now if we went ahead and put a shellac over this, I suspect it would look very similar to this because it will darken it. Now I will do that for you here in a minute. These ones that don't have it, I want to put a coat over the top on these 2-4 just with a little bit of shellac, just so you can see what the final finish may look like if we put a shellac or maybe even a paste wax over it. I got thinking a little bit more and thought, well, what does it really take? How much is actually required to block the grain out? So I picked up another piece of pine here with more accentuated grain lines just so we could see the effect. If we look at this, this is a stain, and this is the shellac once again, the tinted shellac. So both of these have had 7 coats on them, and you can see that the stain has made a pretty good coverage on here, but you can still see it through a little bit. The stain here was not sealed. This was just the straight stain on there without any sort of undercoat or a sanding sealer there. But you can see that this shellac really blocks the grain out very well, being a film finish. So now that we've covered those results, what I want to do is go ahead and we're going to take the control with 4 coats, the darker wood with the 4 coats, and the one that I was trying to block the grain out with 7 coats. And I'm going to grab a little bit of a cloth. We're going to put a little bit of shellac on these so you can see what it's like with some sort of finish over the top of it. And on the other part of it, I'm going to put a little bit of paste wax just so you can see some of the common types of finishes and how they would react with a finish over the top of them if you've not sealed underneath. So normally you'd see me using my brush, but I'm just going to use a little bit of paper towel here for this, and I'm going to apply some 2 pound shellac. So really get that on the cloth, and to our control. And to our 4 coats on the dark timber. And on our pine block in the grain. So while that shellac dries, I've got a little bit of homemade paste wax here, so I'm going to apply a little bit of that to it. So you can see where I've applied this 2-pound shellac on here. So we can see that it's kind of evened the finish out a little bit. If you look at the rag that I used to apply it, it has actually taken some of the stain off. So we can see it has evened it out. You can still see the grain here. There's no real blocking, but it is more evenly applied once the shellac is added. If we look at the darker wood where we've added the shellac, we can see that it's lightened it ever so slightly, because once again it did remove a little bit, but we still have a nice, very even, sort of dark stain here with that finish on top. And then on this one here with the 7 coats, we can see once again it has lightened it slightly, is a little more even, but it has accentuated these grain lines with that shellac. So now if we go and look at the paste wax, we can see the paste wax has actually made it look a little more even than the shellac did. Now maybe we could get that same effect by adding more coats of shellac, but I just wanted to go with the 1 coat here just to show you. So we can see that it is much more even, and although it has lightened it slightly, we lose some of these more accentuated darker spots as well, but it's still not as even as I would like on our control. If we look at the paste wax here on our darker piece with the 4 coats, as you can see here, there's not really too much difference between the shellac and the paste wax there. It gives a very similar effect, and I think it is a little bit darker than what this is. I'm not sure if you can see that on the camera, but I think this is slightly darker in this region just here. And on the 7 coats, it is actually lightened it less. It is actually slightly darker, but once again it has accentuated those grain lines. So there you go, folks. That's the results I came up with using my spirit-based stain, and I can't definitely say that these results are going to be repeatable because I've only done it once, so it's not the most scientific result. It's anecdotal and just showing you the results that I got on the pieces of timber that I got using the application that I have, using the exact stain that I have. Now, water-based stains might come up differently. I'm not sure the effect of a sanding sealer with a water-based stain over the top of it, though I believe it shouldn't be a problem once the stain has dried. Maybe my sanding sealer doesn't do as good a job when it's on top of something that breaks down the shellac that I put on there and used as the sanding sealer, because spirit-based, so metho-based, it would break down the shellac layer that I put on there, so maybe that is part of the reason why I got the results that I got. But I wanted to show you the results that I got, just so you've got some bearing of what to use when you come to actually do this sort of thing for yourself. And it does show that just a straight stain without any sort of sanding sealer will not block that grain, and it is possible that building up the layers of shellac or any other type of film finish is your best bet if you're trying to block the grain. Another thing that I did think of, which I have not done in this video, is that you could maybe stain your piece over the top of a sanding sealer, and to even it out you could then use a shellac with a stain or a tint in it over the top to actually help continually block that grain and feather it all out and smooth it out and make it a lot more even. So, as I said at the beginning, if any of you have got more experience with water-based stains and you've done some tests for yourself, please leave them in the comments down below. And I also urge you, if any of you are going to do something like blocking grain on pine, staining pine, or any timber, do some samples for yourself first before you go ahead and put it on an entire project and maybe wreck that project, because that's not what I want. I'm just wanted to share the results that I've got from this as a novice when it really comes to sanding sealers and stains. So if you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing down below. And if you'd like to support me a little bit further while you're down there, please consider giving me a super thanks if this video helped you out. That would be much appreciated. Or you could consider checking me out on Patreon. That link's in the description below. Please let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see some more of this type of content. Just these smaller videos tackling these questions. So if you like this video and you'd like to see some more videos like this video, please consider checking out the video up here where I show you how to make your own sanding sealer. Bye for now.